What did they do to your child that made you realize being civil was no longer enough, and that going completely nuclear was the only way to protect them? You know, sometimes life throws you a curveball so hard, it shatters your entire world. Imagine thinking your daughter is just going through a typical teenage phase, only to discover a chilling secret, a betrayal so profound it makes your blood run cold. This isn't just about a school crush. It's about a predator, a man who nearly destroyed my daughter's innocence, and the terrifying realization that I had to fight a system rigged against me to protect her. It all started when my 13-year-old, Emma, suddenly loved school. This was the same girl who, 2 weeks prior, would fake illnesses just to avoid class. Naturally, I asked her what was up. "Oh, I have Mr. Davidson for history every day now. His class is super fun." I smiled, relieved she wasn't hating school anymore. I didn't think much of it until a week later. Emma started setting her alarm 30 minutes earlier, just to pick out the perfect outfit. It wasn't like she never cared about her appearance, but she was usually fine just throwing on the first clean thing. I remember teasing her, asking if she was trying to impress a boy. Her face went completely red. "Don't say that, Mom," she yelled. That's when I got truly suspicious. I started watching her normal teenage mood swings more carefully, and I realized they were always tied to Mr. Davidson. She'd never admit it, but I noticed things. If he complimented her project, she'd float around the house for hours. But if he didn't acknowledge her much that day, she'd barely speak, picking at her plate during dinner. That's when I decided to test her, subtly. "I was thinking of moving you out of Mr. Davidson's class. I think it would be good to." Before I could even finish, she yelled, "You can't do that." I just stared at her. "But why not?" I asked. Silence. A deafening silence. She didn't say a word, just stood up and beelined for her room, pulling out her phone to text someone before she even reached the stairs. This was Emma, my girl who, just 2 months ago, didn't care about a single school-related thing. She was always extremely open about everything too, so this was a huge problem. That night, I crept into her room and searched through her phone. I know, a huge violation of privacy, but I truly felt like I had no choice. I had a gut feeling she was in danger. I combed through every messaging app one could find, looking for anything at all related to Mr. Davidson. And that's when I found it. An email thread on a backup email she'd made, seemingly specifically for communicating with him. The last email from him read, "Can't wait to see you during my free period tomorrow." My hand started shaking as I opened the thread, and what I read made me want to throw up. Mr. Davidson was telling my 13-year-old daughter that she was mature for her age and special, and that their connection transcended normal student-teacher relationships. He sent her photos of gifts he'd give to her, and she'd tell him she was hiding them in her bag. I quietly went through her bag as soon as I read it, and that's when I saw it. Expensive professional makeup, mature outfits, stockings, all as gifts from Mr. Davidson. I wanted to puke. What do you even do when you realize your daughter is being groomed? The first thing I did was take pictures of everything with my own phone, trying not to scream. My first instinct was to tell the school, tell the police, tell someone. But I knew I couldn't because Mr. Davidson wasn't just any regular teacher. His parents donated a lot to the school. His brother was the police chief who'd just spoken at our PTA meeting about protecting children. His wife was on the school board. If I went to the authorities, they likely wouldn't take me seriously. They might even destroy me. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I started documenting everything while pretending everything was normal. I began volunteering at school without Emma knowing and watched how he interacted with her. I took photos of the gifts and backed up the emails to different clouds. I started watching documentaries with Emma about consent, talking about news stories where teachers hurt students. I could see the hamster wheel turning in her head as we watched these. She'd often excuse herself midway through, fidget nervously, bite her fingernails. She was finally realizing the truth of what was happening. Unfortunately, this progress was cut short by what is now the worst day of my life. Tuesday. Emma came home from school early saying, "I saw him, Mom," she said. "I saw him do with another girl exactly what he did with me." She took a deep breath, as if the truth still hurt coming out. At recess, Mr. Davidson, he talked to her exactly the same way, the same words, "You're special, different from the others. I love talking to you." He said this looking into her eyes. He touched her shoulder like he did with me. My mouth went dry. And the worst part, she continued, her voice breaking, is that he looked at me afterward as if nothing had happened, as if I were invisible, as if everything he said was just rehearsal. My heart tightened. I knew deep down, I always knew, but hearing it from my daughter's mouth, seeing her face imploding, was like taking a punch to the stomach. Emma, you're not to blame for anything. None of this is your fault, okay? I said, holding her hands. I thought he cared about me, Mom, she said. I thought that I was important, that he really saw me. She closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to erase the last few months from memory. He said he wanted to meet me today after class, that he had a special gift for me. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to go, but now I see he lied to me the whole time. I froze. This was no longer a supposition. It wasn't just suspicious messages or behavioral changes. It was direct confirmation. He was trying to isolate my daughter, use gifts, words, and promises to prepare something that she, innocent as she was, hadn't yet named. But I knew the name and it was disgusting. I hugged my daughter tightly, swallowing the scream that threatened to escape my throat. She trembled but didn't cry anymore. She seemed empty. You won't go through this alone anymore, I whispered in her ear. I promise I'll take care of you. And he'll never come close again. Never again. She nodded, saying nothing, and fell asleep right there, exhausted. I covered her with a blanket, got up, and closed the living room door. I knew that from that moment my life would be different. I couldn't wait anymore or trust in protocols. I needed to act now. But to act I needed proof. And the next step would be even more difficult. That night, when Emma finally fell asleep, I sat in the dark for long minutes, staring at nothing. My heart was restless. I knew I couldn't simply sleep and pretend that all of this would pass with a conversation or blocking his phone. This wasn't a teenage fight. It was serious, too serious, and I needed proof. I needed to show clearly who he really was, even to her. I went to Emma's room, took a deep breath, and carefully picked up her phone. I knew the password. I never needed to use it without permission, but that was more than permitted, it was necessary. I opened the messaging app and went straight to the history with Mr. Davidson. The latest messages were there, intact. He called her my smart girl, said she had a different glow. That the way she saw the world was unique for someone so young. The words seemed gentle at first glance, almost like common encouragement, but they weren't. Not when added to the context. Not when I knew what he was doing. I replied carefully, pretending to be her. Hi, you said you had a special gift. What is it? His response came in seconds, as if he were waiting. You'll love it, I chose it with care. But I'll only show you if you promise not to tell anyone. It's just ours, okay? I swallowed hard. I continued. Where are we going to meet? He sent the address of a remote park, late in the afternoon the next day, said it was safer there, added a winking emoji, and then wrote, Bring that black purse you used last week, you look beautiful in it. At that moment my body froze. This wasn't just an innocent conversation. It wasn't just a teacher crossing boundaries with words. He was planning. He was confident. This wasn't the first time he had done something like this. You could tell by the way he wrote, as if he knew exactly how to manipulate. I continued the dialogue, maintaining the pose of a curious and anxious girl. He began to speak more openly, said he had been waiting for this moment for a long time, that it was difficult to restrain himself in classes, and that she needed to understand that their bond was too special to fit within the school. He used words like true connection, secret friendship, freedom to be who we are. I read each sentence as if it had a blade piercing my chest. I took screenshots, copied the messages, saved everything in more than one place. My whole body trembled, but I knew I needed to maintain control. He thought he was in command, that no one would ever challenge him, that he was untouchable. I closed the app, dropped the phone on the couch, and put my hands on my head. I breathed deeply several times. I cried silently because at that instant it really hit me. If I didn't do something, no one would. Could I go to the school? They would probably silence me. His parents were donors to the institution. His wife was part of the board. His brother was the local police chief. I wasn't stupid. I had seen similar stories before, and they all ended with the victim being discredited and the predator transferred to another school with a clean record. But with me it would be different. If the system was rotten, then I would create my own. And at that instant, I opened the browser and typed with trembling fingers, "How to report online predators without involving local authorities." I spent hours that dawn immersed in websites, forums, videos. Each link I clicked led me to another case, another story, another muffled cry for help. It was scary to realize how much more common this was than imagined, and worse, how so many powerful people were capable of silencing everything with a wave, a donation, or an influential surname. But it was on Instagram that I found something that caught my attention. A video with the title, "We Caught Him Live. He'll Never Approach Anyone Again." It was from a page with thousands of followers that confronted people who posed as teenagers to attract adults with bad intentions. They filmed everything, brought evidence, and only then called the police with everything documented. I watched one, then another, then another. The pattern was the same. They assumed the victim's profile, arranged a meeting in a public place, showed up with cameras and evidence, and directly confronted the aggressor. There was no screaming, no lynching. It was strategy, control, exposure. That was exactly what I needed. I contacted the profile, not expecting an immediate response. I explained everything, that I was a mother, that I already had screenshots of the messages, the meeting address, time, everything. I sent screenshots, reported the history. I made sure to be clear and objective. I ended with a sentence that hurt to write but was true. If I don't do something now, he'll do it to another child, maybe worse. It took time, an hour, maybe two, and then came the response. "We've read everything. It's serious, very serious. We're going to help you." My eyes filled with tears, this time of relief. They called me for a video call at that same instant. It was a group of 4 people, all with firm but respectful voices. They explained how it would work. They would take over the conversation with Mr. Davidson, maintaining Emma's profile. They would play his game until the right moment. We would arrange the meeting in a busy park, preferably on a Saturday, where there would be witnesses and natural security. Everything would be recorded from at least 3 different angles, and in the end the police would be called with everything ready: evidence, location, time, history. But what if he leaves? What if he runs? I asked. We prevent it. We're not violent, but we're not stupid either. We have practice, we know how to handle it. And you won't need to get involved, just tell us where you'll feel safe. They conveyed confidence, seriousness. Nothing like those sensationalist pages that make scandals to get likes. These were people who wanted to prevent more children from being victims. I said I would agree. Of course I agreed. But the truth is that inside I was panicking. The risk, the exposure, the tension that something could go wrong, it was a difficult weight to bear. But then I looked at Emma's phone, still on the table, and remembered what I read in the messages. Everything he had said. How she believed she was special. She was special not because of him but for being who she is, for being my daughter, and no one had the right to play with that. We set the trap for Saturday, 3 days later. The group asked me to stay distant, watching from afar, so that Emma wouldn't be at risk and Davidson wouldn't notice anything strange. They would take care of everything. That night I didn't sleep a minute. I sat next to my daughter's bed and stayed there, listening to her peaceful breathing. I fixed her hair strands like I did when she was a baby, and I promised silently, "He will never touch you again. Not even with words. Never again." Saturday dawned with a strange silence. Emma was still sleeping and I had been awake for hours. I showered, changed clothes, and left with some excuse, said I was going to the market, that I'd be back quickly. She believed it. She had no way of imagining what was about to happen. I arrived at the park half an hour before the agreed time. I parked far away enough not to be seen. The group was already there, discreetly spread out. One of them was adjusting the tripod of a camera hidden among the bushes. Another was pretending to take photos of the landscape with his phone. The third was eating a sandwich on a wooden bench, wearing sunglasses, observing everything. And the last one was disguised as a common teenager, using his phone, pretending to be the Emma that Davidson was about to meet. I positioned myself behind a tree, nervous, sweaty hands, shaky legs. And then he appeared along the gravel path, coming with an almost bouncing step. There he was, Mr. Davidson, light polo shirt, pressed jeans, new sneakers. He even seemed happy, relaxed, as if this were just any walk, as if meeting a student outside of school were the most normal thing in the world. He approached the disguised young man, who continued looking at his phone. "Hi," he said, with the voice I already recognized from afar. It was at that instant that the group moved. Three of them surrounded Davidson in silence, like closing a trap with perfection. The one with the camera approached from behind, already recording everything. "Mr. Davidson," said one of them firmly, "we know why you're here." He stopped, not understanding. He looked around confused. "Excuse me, who are you?" "We're people who protect children, and we have everything you wrote to a 13-year-old girl, thinking she would be here today." At that moment he turned pale. "This is a misunderstanding," he murmured. "I didn't do anything. This is a setup." "Then why did you arrange this meeting?" the other shot back. "Why did you bring this gift?" and pointed to the bag in his hand. Davidson began to sweat. He tried to laugh, disguise, say it was a joke, that everything was misinterpreted, but they continued talking, showing the screenshots, reading excerpts from the messages, phrases he had written, words he used to manipulate. He began to back away, to walk backwards. "I'm going to call a lawyer. This is illegal." "You can't." "What's illegal is what you were doing with a minor, Mr. Davidson." That's when he turned his back and tried to run, but he couldn't. Two of the young men reached him quickly. One held him by the arm, the other blocked the front. He lost his balance and fell, sitting on the grass, dirty, panting, and completely exposed. "Don't touch me," he screamed. But by this time, several people in the park were already looking. Some were filming with their own phones, others were whispering. The truth was spreading before everyone's eyes. "We have everything recorded, everything saved, and we've already called the police," said the group leader, showing his phone. Davidson still tried to get up, but someone, perhaps by reflex, pushed him back, not with excessive violence but firmly. He fell again, this time with a dry slap to the face given by one of the vigilantes, who looked at the camera right after and said, "This is for what you tried to do to this woman's daughter." My heart froze. I was there a few meters away, and everyone knew who the girl's mother was. No one looked at me directly, but I felt seen, represented, avenged. When the patrol car arrived, everything happened quickly. The police officers got out in a hurry. One of them had already seen the video broadcast live, and said that was enough to take him in custody. Davidson tried to explain, tried to justify himself, but there was nowhere to run. He was handcuffed right there in front of everyone. As they took him away, he looked back, scared, lost, ashamed. And for a brief moment I almost felt sorry. Almost. But then I remembered my daughter's expression when she realized she had been deceived. The way she cried as if her world had shattered, and any feeling of pity evaporated. That night back home I sat on the couch with Emma and hugged her. She didn't know everything yet, but she could tell from my look that something had changed. And for the first time in a long time, she slept with her room at peace. Davidson's arrest wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The following Monday, I received a call from the detective responsible for the case. The search and seizure at his apartment had already been completed, and the content they found, well, he didn't even need to describe it. The pause in his voice said everything. But what he told me afterward confirmed what I already feared. Davidson wasn't doing this only with my daughter. They found message exchanges with at least 4 more teenagers of the same age. Some archived conversations, others deleted but recovered. Photos, audios, small videos. He had built a secret routine, acting calmly, using the same methods, the same sweet words, the same expensive gifts. And the worst part, he had been doing this for years. When the video of the confrontation in the park was officially published by the group with proper protection, blurs, and explanations about the case, it exploded. It went viral in a matter of hours, and with it came the comments, the messages, the reports. One mother wrote, "This man was my daughter's teacher in 2020, she was 12 years old. Now everything makes sense." Another, even more direct. "He gave my daughter a lipstick in secret. I thought it was strange, but the school said it was kindness. Today I'm in shock." Dozens came, maybe more than 100. Some old, others current, all keeping the same feeling. Something was wrong, but no one knew how to act, no one had proof until now. The formal complaint happened 2 days later. The prosecution filed for preventive detention, and it didn't take long for the sentence to arrive as well. His name was removed from the school staff roster. His image disappeared from the exemplary educator's wall. But now everyone knew. Davidson was sentenced to a long term without the possibility of appealing in freedom. The video, the screenshots, the reports, everything added up to a solid, irrefutable process. Meanwhile, Emma changed. At first, The trauma still visited her in long silences and sporadic nightmares. But with the psychological support we sought, she began to understand that she wasn't to blame for anything, that she was manipulated by someone who used his position to hide, and that her courage telling me everything saved not only herself but other girls too. She regained confidence gradually. She went back to drawing, she went back to speaking with enthusiasm. And one day she told me a sentence that broke me inside. "Mom, I think I want to use what happened to me to help other girls, so they don't feel silly like I felt." I hugged her so tightly that I ran out of air. She was no longer just my daughter. She was a survivor, a voice, a light for others who might still be in the dark. Nowadays we are both invited to conversation circles in schools, not to tell names or expose details but to teach, to alert, to remind people that danger sometimes wears a tie, says good morning in the hallway, and pretends to teach. The community changed too. The school implemented new protocols, teachers began to be more supervised, parents started paying more attention, and most importantly, children began to be heard for real. And even with the scars, even with everything that could have been avoided, today I can say with a firm chest, we won. And Davidson will never have the chance to deceive anyone again. Not with the whole world watching. Sometimes I find myself sitting on the porch, looking at the evening sky, and remembering everything that happened as if it were an unresolved nightmare. But then Emma appears, laughing with some book in her hands, or calls me to see an illustration she drew herself, and I remember, it wasn't a nightmare. It was real and still we survived. But no one came out of it the same. Emma, for example, is a different girl now. She remains sweet but not naive. She learned, with a hardness I never wanted her to face, that the world can be dangerous even where it should be safe. But she also discovered something more. That she is strong, that her voice matters, and that when it's heard, it can change other people's lives. She still goes to therapy, not because she's broken, but because she knows that taking care of the mind is as important as taking care of the body. Sometimes, on some quieter nights, she still gets restless, tosses and turns in bed, but they're increasingly rare. And today she looks me in the eyes with firmness. She knows what she wants. She knows she deserves respect. And she doesn't accept less than that. She signed up for a support group for girls who went through similar experiences. She's been giving talks in schools even at her young age, and she told me the other day, "Mom, I'll never again think that staying quiet is easier. That's worth more than any diploma." Me? Well, I changed too. I was never the combative type. I was always more the type who resolves things through dialogue, patience. But when it comes to protecting a child, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. Today, I'm active in educational campaigns. I help other parents identify early signs of manipulation and abuse. And above all, I'm a mother who learned to listen with my eyes, with my heart. For a long time I blamed myself for not noticing earlier, but today I understand that guilt doesn't build, vigilance does. An attentive love saves. Mr. Davidson, well, his name became synonymous with warning. He serves his sentence in a closed regime, with no forecast for reduction. The lawyers tried everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Besides our case, for other families formalized complaints. One of them revealed that they had tried to warn the school years ago, but were ignored. Now everything came to light. The last news I had of him was during the final trial, when he tried to make a speech saying he was misunderstood. The prosecutor simply replied, "You were understood perfectly, that's why you're here." And there ended the career, reputation, and disguise he had used for so long. The vigilantes, well, they continue with their work. The video of Emma's case was the one that went most viral on their profile to date. Millions of views, interview invitations. But more important than fame was the impact. They received support from NGOs, psychologists, child protection councils. They improved their methods. They created partnerships with cybercrime departments, and they know they can't take justice into their own hands, but they can expose what needs to be seen. They sent me a message recently. "Your daughter saved lives, and so did you." The other girls, well, each story is a universe. Some were already away from school. Others were still trapped by fear, doubt, trauma. But the exposure of the case made them receive real support. Therapy, legal support, qualified listening. Some mothers came to me emotional saying, "You gave us courage to speak." There's no prize in the world that pays for that. The school, of course, went into crisis. They tried to deny at first, then they tried to minimize, but the public pressure was too great. The board was replaced, protection protocols were updated. Today, there are cameras in hallways, training to identify suspicious behavior, and a new policy of active listening for students. I still distrust some internal intentions, but at least now they know they're being watched. And as for the community, it woke up. People began to look at their own children with more attention, to ask questions that before seemed exaggerated, to understand that abuse doesn't always have an ugly face or a rough voice. Sometimes it comes disguised as a compliment, a gift, a special friendship. And finally, to myself, I learned to trust again, not in the system, not in authorities, but in myself. Because I did what was right, even when it was difficult, and because my daughter looked at me in the middle of chaos and saw a safe harbor. She survived. We survived. And if there's someone listening to this now afraid with doubts, thinking they won't be able to handle it, I tell you, you can. You're not alone. And yes, you can do something, even if it seems small, even if no one believes at first. Because all it takes is one determined mother, one complaint made at the right time, one truth exposed with courage to change everything. This was our story, but I hope from the bottom of my heart that no other mother needs to tell a similar one.